This presentation is brought to you by Darkshore Capital, crafting capital management solutions for your world. Today is November 9th, 2020, and this is the week in goldmaking. Weekly Standup is the time where we all take a moment to reflect on what has been in the last week in goldmaking, what we're planning to do in the next week in goldmaking, and what is it that's getting in our way. Are there any things giving us trouble, blocking our progress? In the past week, I have continued work on the Jards Army, the alt army of engineers who are diligently crafting Jard's peculiar device thing to make the Sky Golem mount, and hopefully cash in on some excellent gold returns come Shadowlands. I've also been doing daily cooldowns across as many of my characters as I can manage to log into every day, in an effort to take advantage of the time component of efficiently making gold. Over the next week, I am of course going to continue doing these things as they are the most efficient thing that I have to do at the moment. Hopefully that'll change once Shadowlands hits and we have a little bit more access to BOEs to flip, which is another area of expertise I have from the past. If I have any extra time, I'm going to continue working on my crafted Transmog. There's many characters with many professions that I have not completed gathering recipes on, and many characters who don't have all of their crafted transmog created. So getting a restock, getting more recipes, that is the name of the game. And lastly, the only thing that's really getting in my way at the moment is motivation. With the Shadowlands looming on the horizon and the fatigue of having to wait for this expansion to come out week after week after week, it's kind of wearing on me a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. Market update for the week. As you can see, we have a few increases and some decreases. I would like to note that Activision Blizzard stock has dropped another percentage point over the week. WoW tokens are remaining about the same price. Oh, what else? Elementium ores continues to go down. That's to be expected, given where people are with their lootarangs at this point. And of course, the boom of gatherers going to all the cataclysm zones to gather up as much elementium ore as possible. Some of these items are going to need to get rotated out pretty soon, so hopefully once I get that motivation problem fixed, we'll get that taken care of. Relics of the Past Part 2 is going to be delayed at least another week. Multiboxing. As I'm sure you all are very much aware of, there is big news. Blizzard has effectively banned multiboxing. Now, I don't want to get into any of the discussion about if this is good, if this is bad, should they have done it or not. That's not what we're about here. What we know is this is what's happening. Multiboxing is going away, and the supply of some materials is going to be in short supply. That's the prediction, at least. It's not a guarantee. There could be ways around it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But my prediction is that things like primals, that's the BC elemental item, volatiles, that's the cataclysm elemental item, and things like ghost iron ore, other high demand, high volume, previous expansion crafting recipe components are probably going to go up in price because there's probably going to be a shorter supply of them. I haven't studied extensively the farms that you would use to do multiboxing effectively, but they range from all kinds of things. You can do it with gathering, you can do it with old content, you can do it with new content, you can farm transmog, you can farm raw gold. It's probably going to affect about everything, but I do think that the most affected things are going to be these, because it's not easy to get primals. It's more easy to get volatiles and ghost iron ore. So as this progresses, as we think more about what's going to happen as a result of multiboxing going away, I'm going to be trying to rack my brain, think of some more things that might be affected, and look and see if we can capitalize on that. I'm not really entirely sure what the way to capitalize on that yet is. However, I do know stuff's happening, and if you pay attention and don't get caught up in the emotions, that's when you make the gold. I've added a new column to this slide. This is the Bullish, Bearish slide. The one in the middle is ghost iron ore. Alluding to the previous slide, I think that with ghost iron ore in short supply, I don't really know what's going to happen to it. I've also added old X-Pack raw materials and group farms. This is also, of course, as a result of multi-boxing getting banned. The old expansion raw materials is on there with the caveat that this is stuff that you hopefully have already. It's probably going to go up in price, so that's why it's over there. Again, we're still kind of sussing out exactly what this slide is, but just general thoughts, trying to drum up some interest, some ideas about things. So the question marks is sort of an in-between, keeping my eye on it. If it's on here, it means I'm thinking about it. That's really ultimately what this slide matters for. So just to review, Bullish, Evergreen Goldmaking, Ghost Iron Ore, forgot to take that off. It's in the middle now. Uncanny Gear, we think we still got a few more weeks on that. Transmog, of course, new players coming back. Lots of interest in getting your character all dressed up. As mentioned before, old X-Pack raw materials that you already have. Joining group farms, since multi-boxing is no longer an option. Farming in a group, I believe, is one of, if not the most efficient ways to farm content in the open world. Then over in the bearish column, BFA materials, of course, still raw gold from old raids and crossover battle pet arbitrage for reasons discussed in previous episodes. Just a couple questions this week. Number one, how do you get started in transmog business? Well, two things to start. Number one, you need capital. You need a pretty solid amount of liquid gold. This is just spitballing off the top of my head, but I would say you'd want at least 100 to 200,000 gold before you want to really start seriously looking into any kind of transmog stuff. You need the capital to either acquire the BOE items that drop or to get the materials you need to craft the BOEs that you're going to sell. Now, the number two thing that I was going to mention was, well, you got to decide if you're going to be focusing on drops or crafted items. If you're focusing on drops, the two ways of acquisition are either going out and farming it yourself, which if you're into that, more power to you. There's plenty of guides on the internet. You can look up on what to farm and where and why. Number two is the auction house. You run scans. You use the tools you have available to you to find deals on items to flip. Now, I'll just briefly go over some good options, some good examples of things you can do. TSM is, of course, an add-on that if you don't have already, you should install that immediately and start working it. It has a great deals search built into it. I am not entirely sure. I think that's actually part of the subscription to get access to that. So if you want to use that, you'll have to probably get the TSM subscription, which is completely worth it, in my opinion. The guys over there that make TSM do a fantastic job, and they do not get enough credit for what they do. The Undermine Journal is another great resource for how to find deals on Transmog. Hickons is kind of the go-to guy on how to do this. I believe he's actually got a video or two on how to do it. But basically, if you go to the Undermine Journal, you find your server, there's going to be a link over on the right. I think it's called Potential Deals. You boot it up, you load up the thing, and then it just shows you like, hey, based on math, these are some items we think might be severely underpriced. And you can just go search for them on the auction house. Or the super pro tip is that page actually includes a TSM string. You just click on the button that says TSM, it highlights the thing for you, you copy paste it into the auction house browser on TSM, you hit enter, boom, they all show up right there, and you can buy them if you want. I've made a lot of gold doing that in not a lot of time. I would highly recommend doing it. But again, you're going to need the capital if you want to do that. If you're going to go the crafted route, I would suggest focusing on one profession at a time, at least to start with, because it will just help you focus on what you're doing. So if, for example, you want to do blacksmithing stuff, pick the blacksmith you want. Pick a character that has some decent mobility, because you're going to have to do a decent amount of farming if you want to really be in the market competitively. The example that I always like to talk about and think about are the Burning Crusade Outlands recipes. So there are a non-trivial number of recipes which are bind on pickup for blacksmithing in Outlands. And you either have to kill mobs in the open world or dungeons, and then in the dungeons it's bosses or mobs. So you're going to be running around doing a lot of just random killing of things from previous expansions. So pick a character you enjoy, to do that with. Something, I don't know, my blacksmith's a warrior, which is nice because you get heroic leap. And it was back when we had the Legion legendaries and I could triple jump and it was great. Anyway, that's for another time. Yeah, there used to be a wonderful website that has since fallen into disrepair, hopefully not for too much longer, that had a nice little categorically thinged of all the different recipes for a given character. You would search by server, character name, show you all the recipes you're missing. You could use that to focus your farming. So yeah, before I get too deep into this, this might actually have to be a topic for another video because, as you can tell, I've been rambling on this for at least a few minutes now. It's something I feel pretty passionately about, obviously. So let's stick a pin in that one and get back to it, because crafted transmog. There's a lot to it, but to get started, either farm the items, get some capital, check the auction house, use the Undermine Journal, or pick a profession and just get all the recipes. Second question: how long should I hold my BOE BFA mounts? It's an interesting question, actually. I thought this was going to be a really easy answer, but thinking about it a little bit more, I'm not quite so sure. So my initial gut instinct is sell them now, get the liquid gold. You're going to need liquid gold going into Shadowlands because that's when all the opportunities for making big bucks is going to happen, and you can't take advantage of those if you don't have gold to start with, and as much as you can possibly get. Now, that said, if we're going into Shadowlands, there's probably not going to be very many people farming BOE BFA mounts once Shadowlands hits. So the price might increase. There also might not be that much interest in BFA mounts once Shadowlands hits because everyone's going to be focused on the new stuff. So with that said, I think my advice is to sell it now, get the liquid gold, because ultimately the return on investment you'll get from having liquid gold going into Shadowlands is going to heavily outweigh any gains you might make holding onto these mounts for a potential price increase due to a lack of supply come Shadowlands. And with that, we're going to wrap it up for this week in Goldmaking. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening to the presentation. Again, my name is Andrew. You can find me on YouTube in darkshorecapital. You can find me on Twitter at darkshorecap. You can find me with an email, darkshorecapital@gmail.com. I'm still holding out. One day, one of y'all is going to send me an email, and it's going to be fun because we're going to talk about gold making. But until then, I wish you all well, happy gold making, and we'll see you next week.